There are some cases that really just stay with you, and this is one of them. This is a story of a little boy who didn't stay silent. He didn't hide what was happening to him. He told people over and over and over again. He told the adults he trusted that he was being hurt. He spoke a haunting sentence that no child should ever have to say. Mama is going to kill me. And the thing is, people heard him. Reports were made. Authorities were called. Yet somehow it was never enough. He was sent back again and again and again. This is the gut-wrenching story of when a child and their trusted adults do everything right, and yet the system still fails. This is the devastating case of Nathaniel Burton. Nathaniel Allen Lewis Burton was born on September 9, 2013 to parents Brian Burton and Sarah Safrenick in Oregon, Illinois. He had two older sisters, Tori and Mackenzie, though Brian was not their biological father. According to those who knew and loved him, Nathaniel was just a really good kid. He loved being around his siblings and cousins, and he was so full of energy. And once you got to know him, he could just play non-stop. Unfortunately, though, Nathaniel had a very rough life from the very start. He was being abused and tortured by the very person supposed to love and protect him. And the thing is, he wasn't running away. He wasn't hiding. He was asking for help. He was telling his trusted adults, and they tried to help him. So many people tried to help him. But still, nothing was done in a meaningful enough way to actually save Nathaniel. When Nathaniel was just a baby, he went to stay with his godparents, Rebecca and Daniel Reyes, for about 5 months. Now, Rebecca and Daniel met Sarah and Brian through their church back in 2000. Rebecca told the pair that she and her husband had always been interested in adopting a child because she herself was adopted as a child. Apparently, when he was 5 months old, Nathaniel's daycare contacted DCFS to report that he showed some signs of neglect. So they reached out to the Reyes to ask if they could foster him, and they agreed. From there, they did try to get full custody of him, but the courts ultimately awarded custody back to Nathaniel's biological father, Brian. At the time, he was living with his mother and had been separated from Sarah. So after about 5 months with the Reyes, Nathaniel returned to live with his biological dad. After that, though, Brian did end up getting back together with Sarah. Now, 4 months after returning to his dad, he returned to live with the Reyes family once again for a short period. Then, for the following years, he spent time going back and forth between the Reyes and his biological parents. Now, even though that initial stay with the Reyes was through DCFS, the remaining back and forth with them was just sort of an arrangement between families. Rebecca and Daniel loved Nathaniel and welcomed him into their home anytime Sarah and Brian would allow. But by the time Nathaniel was around 4 or 5 years old, he began to confide in the Reyes that his mom was abusing him. Sometime in 2018, when Rebecca picked Nathaniel up from Sarah's house, she noticed that he had a huge gash on his forehead. When she asked her about it, Sarah explained that he was just running around the house and hit his head on the kitchen table. The following day, while at the Reyes home, Rebecca brought up the gash, saying that her son has also fallen and hit his head before, just like he did. But that is when Nathaniel admitted that he wasn't running when the injury happened. Instead, he was sitting at the kitchen table when something spilled. His mom responded by throwing her phone at him and hitting him in the head. He said that there was blood all over the place. Then, another night in August of 2018, Rebecca was getting Nathaniel ready for bed when all of a sudden, he said, "Mama Sarah chokes me." To note, he called his biological parents Mama Sarah and Daddy Brian, and the Reyes Mama and Papa, since realistically, he saw the Reyes as parental figures as well, because it seems like he spent almost equal time between each home. When Nathaniel made that startling admission, Rebecca asked him to show her how it happened, so he grabbed her hands and put them around her own neck. He said that he got choked for spilling his juice. By this point, Rebecca and Daniel knew that Nathaniel was being physically abused at home and his life was likely in grave danger. They didn't want to drop him back off at their home, so they contacted the Department of Child and Family Services to try and make their arrangement more official. They wanted to get legal custody of Nathaniel so that he wouldn't have to end up back with his abusers. The report was made on September 8th, 2018. Agents followed up 3 days later and examined Nathaniel as well as his two siblings who were with their biological fathers at the time. They observed no physical injuries on any of the three children, so due to this, the DCFS agent deemed the report unfounded and determined that Nathaniel and his two siblings were safe with Sarah and Brian. At that point, an officer was sent to the Reyes home to oversee the transfer of Nathaniel back into the care of Sarah and Brian. By that point, Rebecca told both Brian and the officer about the alleged choking incident. And when it came time for Nathaniel to get in the car with Brian and Sarah, he was clearly terrified. He tried hiding behind Rebecca and Daniel. He started kicking and screaming, begging them not to make him go, saying, "Mama, Papa, please help me, I don't want to go, don't make me go." The Reyes even pleaded with the officer who saw this whole thing go down, but all he said was that there was nothing he could do. He was only there to oversee. Finally, after more than 10 minutes of fighting, they were able to get Nathaniel into the car. Now, I do want to note that almost every time there was a transfer of the Reyes dropping Nathaniel back off with his parents, there was always at least a little bit of a fight. He always seemed hesitant to go back home. He always showed resistance, but this time was the biggest outburst they'd ever seen. He clearly did not want to go back home with his mom and did not feel safe going back home. After all this went down, of course, Sarah knew that Rebecca and Daniel were the ones who called DCFS and police, so she stopped allowing them to see him. It wasn't until over a year later that they got to see him again. By May of 2020, Sarah, randomly decided that Nathaniel could stay with the Reyes for a few days during the week, but they would pick him back up for the weekend. According to Rebecca, literally as soon as Nathaniel got to their home, even though he hadn't seen them in over a year, he confided in them that he was scared of Mama Sarah because she had been hurting him. But he said that she couldn't tell anyone because if she did, he would have to go back and she would hurt him even more. By that point, he didn't get into much more detail and Nathaniel started going back and forth between the homes again. They sort of went back to their original arrangement. Even though the Reyes knew that something horrific was going on in the home with Sarah, they knew that for the time being, staying silent and being a listening ear for Nathaniel was the best thing they could do for him. Clearly, the last time they tried to help, they were prevented from seeing him for over a year. At least by this point, he got a break from Sarah. He got to spend days at a time with Rebecca and Daniel in a safe, loving home. But then, later that summer in 2020, Nathaniel made another horrifying admission to both Rebecca and Daniel. According to Rebecca, they were in the car when Nathaniel started to tell her that he was in the bathroom taking a bath, when all of a sudden Sarah came in, turned the lights off, and shoved his head underwater. He said that he kept kicking and trying to get away, but he just couldn't get up. He couldn't get away. He said that eventually, though, he did fight hard and long enough that Sarah gave up and let go. By the time they got home, Rebecca pulled out her phone and held it out of Nathaniel's sight and started recording and asked him to repeat the story, and he did.
So tell me that again. She did what? You were in the bathtub already?
Yeah.
And you already had water going?
I turned it off.
Yeah. And then what? She came in there?
Yeah, and she tried to get me to not leave.
How?
She grabbed my neck and she tried to put my head underwater.
Put your head underwater?
Yup.
And what did you do?
I fighted back.
You fighted back?
I holded myself up as hard as I can.
Well, that's horrible. You don't do something like that to a child, do you?
Yep.
Later in the same visit, Nathaniel told Daniel the same story. He gave many of the same details about her turning the lights off, pushing his head underwater, and how he fought with everything he had. In his telling, he said, "Papa, one of these days, Jesus is going to work it out, and I'll be with you guys forever because you're my real family." To which Daniel replied, "Well, one day Papa will probably just take you and kidnap you and take you to Mexico and change your name to Jose, and then no one will find you, and you'll be all right for the rest of your life." They both, of course, acknowledged that this would be wrong, sort of jokingly, but it was okay because he would be safe. The conversation ended with then 6-year-old Nathaniel saying, "I know, Papa, but Jesus will work it out." A few weeks after that, Nathaniel confided in Rebecca about another incident involving his mom. This time, she tried suffocating him. Nathaniel said that he was kneeling by the couch with the cushion off and was playing with cars when Sarah just threw the cushion on top of him, sat on it, and wouldn't get off. He said that he couldn't breathe, and while Sarah sat on him as he struggled under her weight, she was literally laughing. While that happened, Brian apparently ran in and asked Sarah what she was doing before finally pulling her off of him. Days after that, with Nathaniel back at home with Sarah, Rebecca called Sarah, asking her if she could come get Nathaniel to bring him to the park for a family event. At first, Sarah said yes, but then she later changed her mind. She said that Nathaniel's face was red because he had been in a slapping fight with his sister. She said that he was okay, but he just didn't look good, so she didn't want him leaving the house. About a week later, Sarah finally allowed Nathaniel to go back to Rebecca's. At that time, she asked him about the slapping fight he got into with his sister. And as a surprise to absolutely no one by this point, Nathaniel said that that actually isn't how it went down. Instead, he said that he and his sister got into a verbal argument in the car, so Sarah pulled over, got out, opened the car door, and started punching him in the face repeatedly, like rapid-fire punches over and over and over again to his face. By August 5th of that year, 2020, the Reyes called DCFS once again to report everything Nathaniel had been telling them. It was said that DCFS agents made a good faith attempt to see Sarah and the children, but they were unable to make contact. 2 days later, they called again, and this time, DCFS agents saw Nathaniel at the Reyes home. According to Daniel, he heard Nathaniel tell the agent everything he had told him about the suffocation, about being punched in the face repeatedly. But the DCFS agent saw no visible signs of physical abuse, so the report was deemed unfounded. In this case, as the agent was leaving, Daniel basically begged and pleaded with him, telling them that they are his last line of defense. Nathaniel will die if sent back to live with his mom. But the agent said that the incidents were over 2 weeks ago. The information is old, it's outdated. It doesn't matter anymore. I guess a lot can change in 2 weeks, either that or because it's so old it just didn't happen. So none of it mattered. He said his hands were tied and there was nothing he could do. And Daniel was right. Because he did eventually die after being sent back to his mom, but we're not quite there yet. As the Reyes were hearing all of this from Nathaniel during their visits with him, turns out Nathaniel had another trusted adult in his life, his paternal grandmother, Rhonda. The Reyes actually knew Rhonda and had been in contact with her and had been sharing some information with her as well. It doesn't sound like Rhonda was informed of everything, but she did at least know that something was going on in the family. According to Rhonda, she also got to see Nathaniel very often. Nathaniel got to stay at her home almost every weekend and sometimes even on the weekdays when she was off of work. As the Reyes were calling DCFS and trying to get custody of Nathaniel, Rhonda was also trying to work out an arrangement with Sarah and Brian to get Nathaniel to live with her full time. But for whatever reason, even though it was clear as day that Sarah hated her son and wanted nothing to do with him and was literally trying to kill him, she wouldn't allow it. Why? Because according to Rhonda, It was because Sarah was receiving money for Nathaniel, money she didn't want to give up. By February of 2021, Rhonda says that they were sitting in the living room when all of a sudden Nathaniel told her out of the blue that Mama Sarah suffocates me and I can't breathe, and then said, quote, "Mama is going to kill me." Rhonda explained to him that she's trying to get him to move in with her, and he said, "Please hurry, Grandma." When she asked him specifically what Sarah did to him, he said that Sarah would hold a pillow over his face and that he can't breathe. He said that this has happened numerous times over the past few months. His mom will come into his room when he's trying to sleep and will hold a pillow over his face, trying to suffocate him. He told her about the time that she threw a couch pillow on him and jumped on top of him, about the attempted tub drowning incident. After all of this, Rhonda said that she confronted Sarah about the accusations, but Sarah, of course, claimed that Nathaniel was lying. Rhonda also asked Brian about all of this, and he claimed not to know anything about it. When she asked him about the couch and tub incident specifically, though, he did admit that he knew about these times and had to pull Sarah off of Nathaniel. So now, with the tub drowning, Nathaniel didn't just fight so hard that Sarah gave up. Sarah never gave up. She had to be pulled off of him. Same thing when she sat on him and tried suffocating him. Rhonda also said that she tried calling DCFS numerous times but never got any follow-up. When she wasn't hearing back from DCFS, she tried calling the authorities, but the authorities just told her that she needed to go through DCFS. Rhonda recalled one day where she literally called DCFS 6 times, even tried contacting 6 different offices, but couldn't get a hold of a single person. She left messages each and every time, but never spoke to anyone, and no one ever called her back. So even though this sweet 7-year-old little boy had at least 3 trusted adults in his life, all of whom were trying to take the right steps to protect him, nothing was ever done. All because he, as a 5, 6, 7-year-old little boy, couldn't give the exact times and dates for when the abuse happened to these damn DCFS workers, and because he didn't have visible injuries from the abuse, even though he said himself that he was drowned and suffocated, things that don't necessarily leave marks. Sarah probably knew that as well. He was beaten, drowned, suffocated, crushed under the weight of his mom, and God knows what else during the year he was prevented from seeing Rebecca and Daniel. DCFS was probably called over 20 times. They visited him at least a dozen times. In some of these visits, again, he even told DCFS agents about what Sarah was doing to him. Rebecca recorded 2 or 3 videos of him talking about it, yet nothing was done. There were multiple people in his life willing to take him, but because Sarah was getting a check, she insisted on keeping Nathaniel, and DCFS insisted on forcing him to stay living under a roof where he lived in constant fear every waking and sleeping moment of every single day. All of this, the years of torture and abuse, all culminated in the most heartbreaking, devastating end for 7-year-old Nathaniel Burton. By 2:35 a.m. on the morning of Wednesday, February 17, 2021, 911 received a call for reports of a child who was unresponsive. Paramedics responded to the home in Oregon, Illinois, where they discovered Nathaniel on the floor of his bedroom. His father was attempting CPR as he laid there unresponsive. Paramedics immediately took over CPR and transported him to the KSB hospital in Dixon. Hospital staff were desperate to save the little boy's life, but unfortunately, it was already too late. By 3:25 a.m., Nathaniel Burton was pronounced dead at the hospital. From there, an autopsy was performed, and it was quickly discovered that Nathaniel had died as a result of suffocation and had suffered from a ruptured liver. His manner of death was determined to be homicide. Of course, immediately after Nathaniel's death, both Sarah and Brian were taken to the police station to be questioned by detectives. First, in the interview with Brian, the officer asked him what happened that night. According to Brian, he put his son to bed at around 8:30. He gave him hugs and kisses before bed before he left the room for the night. After saying goodnight, he went to the living room to watch some TV with Sarah before going to bed at around 9:30 p.m. By 2:30 a.m., he was awoken by Sarah, who was standing in the doorway of their bedroom, yelling that Nathaniel was not breathing. He immediately called 911, who then instructed him to perform CPR until paramedics showed up. He claimed he did not know anything that happened during that time. He didn't know what caused his death. However, the detective felt that Brian wasn't telling him the full truth, so he told him straight up that Nathaniel was suffocated to death. He said that there were only 2 people at home with him and his wife, so one of them had to be responsible. But Brian was adamant that it was not him. He was adamant that he never laid a hand on his son, and neither did his wife. In Sarah's interview, she said much of the same. She went to bed that night, and once she got up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night, she went to check on Nathaniel. That is when she found him unconscious and not breathing in his bed. She had no idea what happened to him, but made sure to call 911 right away to save his life. But once again, the detective straight up told her that Nathaniel was suffocated and it had to be one of them who did it. Sarah immediately started crying, saying that she doesn't want his death to be pinned on her or her husband. She said that she didn't hurt her son and she wanted an attorney. So pretty quickly, that interview had to be ended because she could no longer be questioned without an attorney present. But shortly after speaking with Sarah and Brian, Rhonda, Nathaniel's grandmother, came forward to tell police what she knew about her grandson's death. When she was told that his cause of death was suffocation, Rhonda was devastated. She immediately started telling officers everything Nathaniel had told her the past few months. How Sarah sat on him on the couch pillow and she is not a small woman. That is how Rhonda worded it. Rhonda talked about how she held his head underwater and tried to drown him, how she held the pillow over his face while he was in bed. She even said that she confronted Brian and Sarah about the incidents, and Brian admitted to pulling Sarah off of Nathaniel multiple times. After hearing this information from Rhonda, officers went back to speak with Brian a second time. They told him what they just heard about how Brian and Rhonda talked about some of the abuse he witnessed Sarah doling out, yet he was trying to act like he didn't know anything about it to police. But this finally got him to admit that he did know about a few incidents where, over the past few years, he had to stop Sarah from hurting Nathaniel. In one incident, he said that he caught Sarah in the living room, hitting Nathaniel in the back with her cane over and over and over again, only stopping when Brian pulled her off. This left Nathaniel with bruises all over his back. He also admitting to pulling her off when she was trying to drown Nathaniel in the tub. Yet, despite this, despite knowing that she had abused and tried to kill him and hurt him so many times over the years, he still said that he didn't think she killed their son. He was completely in denial. Officers also spoke with Rebecca and Daniel Reyes, who told them pretty much everything I've told you up to this point, how they met, how they fostered Nathaniel when he was a baby, but he just kept getting sent back to his biological parents, how Nathaniel tried telling them everything he was going through, how they made report after report to DCFS, but nothing was ever done. She also showed them the videos where Nathaniel is speaking about his mom holding his head underwater in the tub and hitting him in the face after the car ride. By that point, officers had a pretty good idea of who was responsible. Everything pointed towards Sarah abusing her son. She had a past history of beating him, trying to drown him, and trying to suffocate him, and his cause of death was suffocation. Based on this, detectives obtained warrants to search the home and Sarah's cell phone. And let me say, what they found on Sarah's cell phone was horrifying. If you somehow didn't already believe the words straight from Nathaniel that his mother wanted to kill him, you certainly will believe it now. Detectives found various Google searches on Sarah's cell phone, all of which were made in the 6 months before Nathaniel's death, as well as on the day of his death. They are as follows. On July 30th, 2020, she searched how to quickly kill someone and 16 steps to kill someone and not get caught. July 31st, 2020, common cleaning products that will kill you instantly, 12 most dangerous household chemicals. Then there are several more searches relating to suicide. August 5th, 2020, I've had thoughts about killing my kid, thoughts of killing my children. Anyone else have them? Does having scary thoughts mean you'll act on them? After I had my last kid, my mental health went to shit. November 1st, 2020. What is it called when a parent is obsessed with the thought of killing their child? She then clicked on the following titles: Vice.com/Why Some Mothers Kill Their Children, Parents Who Kill, Clinical and Legal Perspective, Parents Who Kill /Psychiatric Times. November 11th, 2020. Overdose of risperidone, lisinopril drugs and lactation database. Can I breastfeed while taking lisinopril? What's right about a 6-year-old that breastfeeds? Is it abuse to nurse a 6-year-old? November 16th, 2020. Buy arsenic online. Arsenic metal powder buy online in India. Wired.com best deadly poisons. December 8th, 2020. How to kill someone with a voodoo doll. February 16th, 2021, she Googled Scott and Lacey Peterson. February 17th, 2021, at 6:44 a.m., after Nathaniel was discovered dead, she searched, how much does cremation of a child cost? At 1 p.m. the same day, she searched for the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, portable guides to investigating child abuse, then searched, how long does an investigation take after a child passes away? According to documents, other searches were found without timestamps for the following items: how to quickly kill someone, thoughts of killing my kid, drugs that can kill you in 5 minutes, common homicidal poisons, how can trazodone kill you, and can Narcan help a trazodone overdose? Horrifying, just disgusting. 4 months, as she was constantly abusing and torturing her son, she was also trying to find ways to kill him before she finally went through with it in the middle of the night when no one could stop her. All of this was happening as Nathaniel was telling trusted adults, as they were making reports, calling the authorities, calling the Department of Family and Child Services. She was making these Google searches. She was planning how she was going to kill her child, all while being let go by the authorities every single time. I'm sure it just empowered her time after time. Finally, after learning all of this information, then 34-year-old Sarah Safranek was arrested and charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of aggravated battery to a child in relation to that lacerated liver injury that Nathaniel suffered. She was given a $2 million bail, which she couldn't post, so she was ordered to await her trial in jail. From there, the case sat in the court system for years. First, there were questions regarding Sarah's mental health. In the days after Nathaniel's death, as the investigation was ongoing, by February 23rd, Sarah apparently overdosed on prescription drugs and had to be airlifted to the hospital in Rockford, Illinois. She stayed there for 9 days before she was transferred to a psychiatric hospital where she stayed for 6 days. There, she said that she suffered postpartum depression and was addicted to drugs and alcohol. At the hospital, she was given injections to help alleviate her cravings. What a coincidence that just days after murdering her child and being questioned by police, she suddenly overdoses and has to be admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Now, I absolutely empathize with anyone who suffers from postpartum depression. I've never experienced it myself, as I don't have kids. I have obviously experienced my own mental health issues, and I also know many women very close to me who have experienced postpartum depression, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And I know that it makes you think and do things that you normally would never even dream of. But Nathaniel was 7 years old. As far as I know, postpartum depression typically happens within the first few months after a child is born and can last up to a few years. But 7 years later, I don't buy it. And even if that were the case, she had 7 damn years to get help for it and apparently never did. Again, I understand mental health struggles. Trust me, I really do. I understand that they're really tough to deal with, especially if you have kids. But at the end of the day, as a parent especially, it is your responsibility to help yourself, especially if you have thoughts of harming your child. And after 7 years, and after numerous people offering to help, I don't buy it one bit. Especially given that, from what I understand, he wasn't even at home most of the time. He was maybe at home for a few weeks at a time when he wasn't with his grandmother or godparents. So she got breaks when she needed them. And if she needed time to take care of her mental health, she had plenty of it. So again, I'm just not buying it. Either way, after that whole stint of trying to argue that she was not mentally competent for trial, a judge did ultimately rule that she was mentally fit for trial. Her defense team then tried to file many motions to get certain pieces of evidence thrown out, including the statements from Rebecca, Daniel, and Rhonda. They tried to throw out some of the Google searches and the cell phone videos. They tried to get rid of pretty much everything. Something else I thought was interesting was that she tried to motion for the court to release her while she awaited her trial, arguing that the state didn't meet the burden of proof to hold her. In the argument, the state mentioned that Sarah said that she wanted to stop taking her psychiatric medication before her trial so that she could be more emotional, so she could conjure up more emotions. Her doctor warned her that quitting cold turkey could cause seizures, but she wasn't worried about that. She was stronger than that. She said that when they showed the autopsy photos at trial, she wanted to cry so hard that deputies had to remove her from the courtroom. Apparently, that was her plan to escape. She would try to leave once she was removed. The statement was ultimately reported to the court, and she came back and said that it was just a bad joke. She pointed to her physical condition, i.e., her being overweight. She said that that made it impossible for her to actually run off and escape, even though that is not true at all. Just because you're overweight does not mean that you're not physically capable of running away and escaping. That makes absolutely no sense. She said that in reality, she just wanted to be able to show a genuine emotional reaction to the autopsy photos in trial, not a fake one. She thought that giving a fake reaction at trial might not look good with the jury, so she needed to be off her medication so that she could show a genuine reaction, not so that she could escape. How about you just have a genuine reaction? How about you just actually feel bad for what you did? I get that sometimes maybe these medications can numb you a little bit, but even if you're on a medication, at least in my opinion, if you're looking at autopsy photos of your dead child, you should still be able to conjure up some emotion from that. So again, I'm not buying it. Of course, in the end, this motion was denied, and so were so many others. But finally, after years of delays, it seemed like things were not going in Sarah's favor at all. So finally, by July of 2024, Sarah worked with the prosecution to come up with a plea. From what I read, it seems like this wasn't because she just wanted to, accept her guilt. It was more so because all of her requests were being denied, and she probably didn't want all of this to be in front of a jury. She didn't want the Google searches and her horrible history of trying to murder her child for years to be presented in front of a jury for them to get to decide what punishment she would face. So I think after things just weren't going her way in the court, her defense team was probably like, all right, we need to come up with something here to get you the least amount of time as possible. So ultimately, she decided to plead guilty to 1 count of first-degree murder. From there, she was given a sentence of 35 years behind bars for the horrific death of her 7-year-old son, Nathaniel Burton. And to her, I think that's probably the best she was going to get. It's not life behind bars, but that's probably going to be the rest of her life, at least hopefully. I mean, she, I guess, will get out in her 60s or 70s by this point, but I hope she doesn't live that long, if I'm being honest. I hope every single prisoner knows exactly what she did and will not be very kind to her. And that is where the case sits as of right now. This little boy lived a tortured life anytime he was under the same roof as his mother. He had so many people in his life advocating for him, trying to get him into a safe household, but no one with any real authority would help him. I just picture that DCFS investigator who sat and listened to a 6-year-old little boy talking about being choked and suffocated and drowned by his mom, and his only response is, "Sorry, kiddo, you couldn't give me the date, time, and specific coordinates to when this happened, so I guess it just didn't happen. Sorry." It's just disgusting. How can these people sleep at night? How can you hear that and then go home and eat dinner with your family and get up for work the next day, knowing that you are part of the reason that this little boy is being beaten, suffocated, drowned? It's so infuriating, and I cannot wrap my head around it. DCFS visited multiple times, roughly a dozen, And no, Nathaniel didn't admit to what his mom was doing to him in every single interview. Of course he didn't, because the times he did tell someone, he was sent back to his mom and prevented from going back to his safe place for a year and was horrifically abused and punished for it. But sometimes he did tell them. Sometimes he did tell DCFS his own words. He was telling them himself. And even then, no one did anything. It's unbelievable. More of these DCFS agents need to be held accountable, because at this point, it's not enough to say that I hope that they think about Nathaniel's death every single day, every single moment of every day. And I do hope that they feel the weight of the guilt from knowing that they helped cause this little boy's death, but that's not enough. They need to be held accountable to show them that they can't keep simply ignoring these children, or there will be consequences. I understand that they're overworked and underpaid, but I'm sorry, so are a lot of other professions, especially in healthcare. I work in healthcare. I am underpaid and overworked. I'm sorry, but I'm not just going to ignore if I have a child in front of me who is crying for help. I'm not just going to ignore what I am there to see them for. That is no excuse for ignoring a child when they're telling you they are being abused. The only silver lining in this case is that Nathaniel is no longer suffering. That is the only positive thing to come of this, because everything else about this case is just putting such a pit in my stomach. It breaks my heart. I hope that Sarah never sees the light of day again. I hope that Brian also lives every single day in constant agony for not doing anything to stop Sarah from harming his baby. Which, by the way, I don't understand why he also wasn't charged with anything when he literally admitted to having to pull Sarah off of Nathaniel. But okay. And I hope that Nathaniel's two sisters can move on and heal. I hope that they're with family members who will love and support them. I hope that Rhonda, Rebecca, and Daniel, and everyone else in his life who tried to help him can all move on from this as well, knowing that they did what they could, even if nothing came of it. But that is where I'm going to end today's video. I know this was an extremely rough one, and I understand if most of you didn't even get to this point, because this was not an easy one to get through. But now that we're through the case, I want to hear from you all. What do you think of this case overall? What do you think of how it went down and DCFS in action? Do you think that they could have and should have done more? If so, what could they have done? Let's discuss this and any other thoughts you have in the comments below. If you like this video, please make sure to go ahead and leave this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I put out new true crime and mystery videos every single week. Don't forget to turn the notification bell on so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Spotify. All will be linked down below. And if you have any case suggestions, please make sure to fill out my Google form, which is also listed down below. With that, I hope you guys have an amazing week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.